Hi, I'm Dr. Jim Edwards. I'm an aviation examiner at LaPorte Airport and have been a private pilot for 25 years. I want to tell you about my love of flying. I love airplanes. I remember probably one of my earliest childhood memories. My dad took me to Chanute Field in Rantoul, Illinois, because his brothers flew bombers for World War II there. The next flying memory was my mother bought a flight flight from Midway Airport, and a private pilot took us up over the city at night, and which is something you can't do now, and it was just an exciting experience. And this may seem silly, but the jet age started when I was in high school, and and not for this reason, but as a graduation present, I got to fly on a airliner to Tucson, Arizona, and I remember looking out of the window and seeing the moon shining off the silver wings. It was just so cool. So when I was in medical school, I more or less enlisted in the Navy and was able to do my internship. And during that time, another intern asked me if I'd like to join a flying club, so we took flying lessons at the airport in Phoenix. I remember flying a Skyhawk for a few times. Then I went to Pensacola, Florida to enter training to be a naval flight surgeon. That was fun. It was bachelor days on steroids, and I got to learn to fly a D-28, which was a World War II trainer, 1,200 horsepower airplane, and it was just amazing. Also, as a naval flight surgeon, I had my duty station was on an aircraft carrier on the west coast. It was USS Hancock, and our duty station on active duty was 90 miles off the coast of Vietnam. One of the fun things I did was I was always trying to get flight time because we got paid extra if we got flight time, and I landed on the ship in the right seat of a two-engine jet. During that time, I was using my Super 8 movie camera, which was a big clunky thing back in 1970. And I was holding it up, and we were on short final, and the pilot looked over at me and said, "Doc," he said, "put that down, otherwise it'll go through the windscreen when we trap." So, which we did, and walked away from that, and that was fine. And then I did something that was pretty stupid, but I had the offer to go into Vietnam and fly with the Air Force in the backseat of an F-100 over Super Sabre over Vietnam, and at low level. And I didn't tell my wife, who was actually at the naval base in the Philippines while I was doing that, but I made it back, and it was another fun thing. So I put flying on hold during my pediatric practice in LaPorte. And then toward the later years, some of my pilots who were aviators said, "Why don't you start doing flight physicals?" Well, I came to the point where I was able to take the time to go to Oklahoma City for training, and I became an AME, that's Aviation Medical Examiner. The funny thing happened. After the third pilot said, "Are you a pilot?" I thought, better do something about that if I want to have any credibility. So I signed up for flight training at LaPorte Airport, and my flight instructor is currently flying for American Airlines. And I got my flight certificate, and a few years later, was a part owner of a Cherokee 180 with another guy. Mostly flew around just to practice flying here, maybe go to a short cross country to go get breakfast someplace. My wife, who said, "I thought you probably would do that," was glad to go with me, and she was sort of the navigator, and we'd maybe fly down to Muncie for lunch or some other place. Probably the highlight of that flying, though, was when my partner and I flew to Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. A young pilot who was my best friend's son was a B-2 bomber pilot, and he invited us to come down and spend a couple days with him and go see the airport in the B-2, and we got to fly the simulator. Was that cool or what? So while I was on the ship, I walked around. I didn't really have that much to do with 3,000 healthy guys there, so I entertained myself. I'd go stand on the landing signal officer's platform at the back of the ship, or one time I was up in the what they call Pry-Fly, which is the control tower on the aircraft carrier, and it was at night, and they were having what's called carrier qualifications, and new pilots were practicing their landings at night. This one young guy in an F-8 was approaching the ship, and he was having trouble, and he was too low, and the LSO was yelling at him to put on power. He crashed into the back of the ship. A huge fireball went by, and it was over. And so I went down to talk to my boss, who was the Carrier Air Group commander. That's called a CAG, and I was pretty upset about that, and told him about it. He goes, "Well, that's the name of the game," and that's what pilots have to tell themselves when they're doing those, putting their life on the line, landing on a moving airport at night or during rough seas where it's going up and down and back and forth. And so, I was just a 28-year-old doctor out of training and thought I knew everything. Well, I grew up that night, so it's all part of the experience. It's been part of my life, and I do it again in a heartbeat.
What was the name of your ship, and how many years were you on it?
I was on the USS Hancock. It was actually a leftover from World War II aircraft carrier. I was on the ship for 2 cruises. My total time in the Navy was about 3 years. And I flew back from Japan and to Travis Air Force Base. I'm just going to tell you this, a very personal story. When I was in the service, it was during the Vietnam War. Military was really held in disregard. I mean, we couldn't wear uniforms in civilian life, not even at the airport. And so we were on this, I don't know how long a flight it was from Yokota Air Force Base to Travis, but sometime early in the morning, after a long flight, the pilot came on, and he said, "Well, we're approaching continental United States." He said, "I want to tell you thank you for your service." Excuse me. No one had ever said that to most of us. It was such a moment I never forgotten. In fact, I don't tell the story very much because I get a little bit emotional about it, but very important in my life. The reason I became an AME actually was to start a field of work that I could continue following my pediatric practice, because I didn't want to retire at 62. And I was fortunate enough to be able to get an office at LaPorte Airport, where I've been for over 18 years. And an AME, I think, is like a flight surgeon. A flight surgeon's job is to take care of his pilots. So guys don't like going to the doctor, but I tried to do a good physical exam and also assist them in medical maintenance. Did you get your test for this or test for that? And did you lose? You need to lose weight, man. And you'd be surprised how compliant these guys were. But maybe they were afraid I wouldn't pass them. But that's not true. But early on, I found a guy with it turned out to be early Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he went to his doctor, and that's how they found the diagnosis. He got treated, and then a year later he was flying again for Southwest Airlines. Another guy had some large lymph glands, and he had a form of leukemia, but he's living and well. And I had several guys actually with melanoma. The most noteworthy one had two bad moles when he came in to see me, and I said, you need to do something about that. And he said, well, that's what my girlfriend and my mom said. So he went to the doctor, found out he had melanoma, which had spread to his lungs. And back then, which was 6 years ago, most people wouldn't have lived for another 6 months. He went to the University of Chicago, started on the new immunotherapy, and was completely cleared up for 6 years. And during that time, he had to take some time off for flying, but then he got his job back with the flying, and it saved his life. So I was just doing my job, but, it's good to feel like you're actually doing something to help people. So, people ask me about my military experience and whether I'd do that again, and I do it again in a heartbeat. It changed my life. So if you're watching this, you are probably thinking of becoming a pilot. First thing you should do is locate a flight school and find out what the requirements are. Requirements for training, time, and of course the cost. Then locate an aviation medical examiner and get your flight physical done early. Because if you're under 40, it's good for 5 years for a third class. And if you have any medical issues, they can get those cleared by the FAA. The overall denial rate is only 0.1%. In other words, 99.9% of medical conditions are certifiable. So, I would go for it. This taxi driver picked up a nun, and they were driving along, and she noticed he was staring at her in the rearview mirror. So she said, "Is there a problem, my son?" And he said, "Well, yes, sister, I guess you caught me. I have the thing about nuns. I've always wanted to kiss a nun." So the nun was quiet for a minute, and she said, "Well, I guess if you're Catholic and you're single, it would be okay." So he pulled over to the curb, got in the back seat, kissed the nun, got back behind the wheel, and they're driving along, and she could hear him whimpering. She said, "Are you troubled, my son?" He said, "Yes, sister, I have a confession. I'm Jewish and I'm married." So the nun said, "Well, okay." He said, she said, "I have a confession too. I'm on the way to a Halloween party. My name is Kevin."